Why would someone like Paladins, a free-to-play game, over Overwatch, a AAA title from the mega studio Blizzard, you may very well ask? Well, today I'm going to go over why I personally prefer Paladins to Overwatch. Now, I know making positive Paladins videos puts you into the firing line for Overwatch fans, and all my videos thus far have become battlegrounds between the two fan bases. So I want to make it clear that I do like both games, and the reasons for liking Paladins more are subjective and lie in the nuance of the choices you make during gameplay and a few other differences. And opposed to a lot of vocal opinion, the games are different when you dig into the nitty gritty. So as a disclaimer, here are some things I think Overwatch does do better. Overwatch is generally more stable and everything is more balanced, whereas Paladins is still in beta mode. Some champions don't feel 100% right, and some of the choices you make in game are slightly redundant, and it does feel a little incomplete. The graphics are undoubtedly better in Overwatch, the textures, particle effects are all of a higher quality than in Paladins. Not to say Paladins looks bad, but you can see money has been well spent on Overwatch. The actual character designs on the visual level are pretty level in both, and I'd say more bombastic in Paladins using the fancy license liberally, and whilst Overwatch does have a big porn scene which points towards an extreme liking of the character designs, Paladins does seem to go into the lewd zone too. I'm talking about Grover and Makoa obviously. Anyway, moving on. What Paladins is missing is the emotional attachment. Overwatch has Pixar-level animations of characters' backstories showing intimate moments in their past and forging a deeper emotional connection with the player. One of the reasons I suspect Overwatch fans are so eager to stomp out any threats in the genre. And with that disclaimer out of the way, what I want to go over is my subjective view on why I enjoy Paladins more than Overwatch. A big one for me is the depth created by having a card system and item shop in the game. Both Paladins and Overwatch have branched off from the traditional MOBA scene, taking the concept of heroes and abilities into the FPS arena. Overwatch opted to ditch the idea of character progression in the game for a flatter skill-based arena playing field. However, Paladins hasn't quite shed off so much of the old skin. The item shop in the game is the big one really. Whilst there are currently only 19 items to choose from in Paladins, they act very much like the item shops in MOBA games, for example giving you damage resistance, giving you high damage, or specializing you for taking down shields or stopping the enemy team healing. The meta in the game, well for players that know what they're doing, is buying items that counter enemies' team composition and also the item choices they have made, and this is possible as you're able to see the enemy's choices in the tab menu. The game will change as you play through the rounds, and you may very well find that the extreme damage you're putting out at the start is squashed as the enemy team has bought specifically to deal with your direct damage. If your team composition consists of several healers, the enemy might focus on reducing your healing, and you are rewarded for playing well with these items. But they aren't quite enough to make you unstoppable, more that they help you counter an aspect of the enemy team that is causing you a lot of trouble. In Paladins, the item shop also replaces the meta in Overwatch for changing heroes to suit the situation. For example, perhaps getting more tanks for a last-ditch push. The item shop, in my opinion, is a more organic way of specializing mid-game of a drastic hero change, but that might be something you enjoy in Overwatch. And in Overwatch, the only real progression you have in the game is your ultimate charging, where you're rewarded for playing well with an attack that can be cataclysmic for the enemy team. Paladins does have ultimates too, which are extremely powerful, but I would say due to most characters having an escape ability and lower damages, they aren't quite as pivotal as they are in Overwatch. I mean, last patch there was Skye who could kill anyone through shields unless you were behind cover, but that has been nerfed now. The in-game shop in Paladins is also complemented by how you can specialize your champion before the match even starts. The cards in the game all enhance one of your abilities and are split into the 4 categories of your abilities or your weapon and armor. On one level, it does let you specialize a hero to do something really well that vanilla heroes aren't capable of. Like the archer Cassie, you can invest in making her roll go further, cool down quicker, and lifesteal on her first hit after rolling. Mine is called the Jumpy Bay loadout for her, and it achieves just this. It means I'm more mobile and able to flank than the vanilla might be able to do. These loadouts can also be used to try and counter the enemy team composition at the start of the game, but can't be changed during the game, so they will have less dynamic impact as the item shop can have. But, for example, Bomb King, one of the champions, can specialise their stun bomb to do more damage to shields, and if there are a few enemy shield heroes, you might preemptively pick that loadout to take them on. I don't necessarily think it has as much of an effect on the meta as it allows you to take on several playstyles with one hero that is less fixed than Overwatch. That comes onto the way roles work in Paladins. There is a lot of crossover with the champions, and with card loadouts they can be tweaked to suit different playstyles, along with items bought during the game, whereas in Overwatch a Mercy can only really heal and support, a Reinhardt is pretty much only a tank and a big shield. A lot of the characters in Paladins may be able to heal, but like Pip, the Fox Grenadier, they also make a good flanker. Even with the more traditional healers like a Grover, you have a lot of mobility, can do damage, and sometimes at the end of the game you might have the most eliminations and damage output. You're not often stuck just healing. This isn't a big difference, but it could be something you like better about either game. Paladins also pulls more on the traditional status effects of MOBAs. There are silencers which stop enemies from using abilities, lots of stuns, a fear ability which makes enemies run away, and lots of debuffs and slows. In some ways it could be part of the fancy license and being able to get away with magic, but it means you have to be aware of more than simply damage output. Again, there are a few stuns in Overwatch, debuffs and such, but not quite as many as Paladins. Again, if you like a more pure FPS experience, this might actually put you off, so it is subjective. The rank mode is also something else I do prefer in Paladins. What happens is, in the champion selection screen, you take turns picking your character and counter picking your enemy. Each champion can only be picked once, so compositions aren't set in stone. On one level, it is less of a visual mindfuck seeing the same hero on your team, but also means you have to be more dynamic with your team setup. In Overwatch there always seem to be compositions in the meta, but here that can be broken with one pick. The time you spend picking is also an exercise in suspense build-up and tension. In Dota 2 the picks can be as interesting as the game when you watch team captains scramble and sweat over enemy choices. The downside at the moment is that there isn't quite large enough a roster yet to make it completely work as well as other MOBA games. But as a concept, in practice I do prefer this, even if it isn't quite complete. Another downside is there really isn't enough people playing the competitive mode yet, which is a shame. Whether people are grinding out all the champion levels to play it, as you have to play a lot of games to level it up, I'm not sure, but it would be nice if everyone got on it. Little hint there, play ranked please. In both Paladins and Overwatch there is a problem of the pre-made stomp, although for now it's less noticeable in Paladins, but people have started to complain about it. In Paladins rank mode you can't have a pre-made, so it's the only safe haven. Well, if you can be bothered to wait for a game that is. Don't expect the best community in either game. I mean, well, pretty much any team-orientated game in existence has some pretty toxic flamers. You just have to thicken your skin and ignore it. Positively or negatively, Paladins doesn't have voice comms integrated yet, but they do promise to have that in the near future. Whether you'll be muting your whole team we can only guess, and something Paladins does do well at the moment is a very thorough emote system where you can learn a combination to press to indicate someone flanking or a situation through 3 key presses starting with V. Overwatch did have something similar, but I didn't clock quite onto the quick macro mode, but it might just be the focus with no voice comms in Paladins at the moment is forcing me to use it. Lastly, I better talk about the free-to-play model of the game. Whilst heroes are unlocked with the in-game gold or a founders pack to unlock all the heroes forever, which is pretty cheap at the moment at £10, which I got, but another factor of whether you want to invest money over Overwatch. But as the heroes aren't fixed, you don't quite feel as if you're stuck doing one thing or are too hindered with the others locked up. But the gold grind is quite generous, and as you learn to play one hero for free, you'll likely unlock another hero. Also, although you buy the cards with in-game currency to make your builds, I have a lot still yet to unlock as I don't think they fit in with what I was trying to achieve, and you only need 5 for a build which aren't too expensive. The skins are the real big one, all of the best looking ones are paid for and I guess their main planned income. But there are several promotional ones on the go now that are on the same level, like you can unlock the Barrack TF2 skin by winning 5 games with them on Steam for example. Also in Overwatch I think it is pretty cheeky to have microtransactions on the loot crates even though you have paid a hefty AAA price for the game, but obviously a lot of people love unboxings and dank skins, so that might be your jam. Wrapping this whole video up in a little bundle, I like the meta game in Paladins more, mostly as a MOBA player. I find the item shop and customization of your hero's build more intuitive than swapping your heroes mid-game to get different abilities for attack and defend. I like the fact that the champions in Paladins can do pretty much everything, and you're never stuck as a Mercy healing solely for everyone. I like the fact that there isn't an attack or defend fixed stage in the main siege mode, and the attack and defense is only triggered by your initial tussle over a neutral point. I like the way the rank system makes you pick and counter pick, and heroes cannot be taken twice even if the champion pool needs to be bigger and more people need to get into the rank mode. I do think it is rough around the edges, but I'm just having more fun than I did with Overwatch. But importantly, what I've outlined isn't an objective better or worse, and it may honestly be that you prefer the metagame in Overwatch. You might just dislike the power of items and builds over pure skill. You might like a more traditional shooter stance on balance, and it may be that Overwatch is the game for you. I just feel a lot of bigger YouTubers have simply painted the picture of Paladins being a free-to-play Overwatch. And they are very similar games and are the emergent titles in a new character-based shooter genre, but I think once you dig into them, the metagame may be the flavour to consider when you choose between the two experiences. And props to TotalBiscuit for his great breakdown, but I feel he got to the bone of the issue but didn't quite expose the bone marrow of the meta differences quite as thoroughly. Anyway, the choice is up to you. What do you think of the two ideas of metagame? Which one do you prefer? And do you still feel Paladins is an Overwatch clone? I'm sure you'll let me know in the comment section below. And it's worth mentioning all champions on Paladins are free to play this weekend, although that's almost over. So if you feel like giving it a go, you might want to try it out tonight to get a better feel for the game. Anyway, if you thought this video had a good meta, give it a like. If you thought it was evil Paladins propaganda, give it a dislike. Anyway, subscribe for more Paladins, new games and my content, and thank you all very much for watching. Until next time, Joshino.